Hello, my name is James Arroyo, and welcome to Chapter 11, Speaking with Confidence. Previously, we've talked about what communication is, as well as how to listen. Now we're going to be talking about some of the psychological and physiological things that happen to us as we publicly speak. Because one of the biggest challenges with public speaking is the fear of public speaking. So we're going to learn what that fear is, as well as how to overcome it. So let's dive right in. But before we jump into public speaking, first we have to talk about ethos, pathos, and logos. Pathos is the emotional path that we take people down. Logos is the logic through evidence and reasoning. Ethos is the important part of this chapter, and that is the speaker's credibility. And when we feel anxious, we communicate it, and that diminishes our ethos. So we want to be sure that we are reducing that. So when creating ethos, before we create ethos, we have to define it. Ethos is defined as the character that is attributed to a speaker by listeners based on what the speaker says and does in the speech. So there's two big parts to this definition. First, it is defined as the character that is attributed to a speaker by listeners. So it is not our we can be incredibly confident, we can be incredibly credible, but it is the audience who determines our ethos. And for some audiences, certain behavior is going to be more effective in creating ethos. For other audiences, different behavior is going to create ethos. Give you an example. What sort of behavior creates ethos for a Republican candidate versus a Democratic candidate? And we can go down the list through all sorts of organizations. All of them have different behaviors that define character. And then, second, by what the speaker says and does in the speech. So we have control over our ethos. We have the ability to change and adapt what we say and do to create ethos. So, how you present your information to the audience and how the audience receive it, that is what creates ethos. But what do we communicate when we experience public speaking anxiety? Maybe we fidget, maybe we lose our spot, maybe we do things like that, all of which don't improve our ethos. So we want to be sure that we're improving it. But now we're going to expand this a little bit because speech anxiety is the same thing, or it's underneath the umbrella of communication apprehension. And we experience communication apprehension all the time. Communication apprehension is the individual level of fear or anxiety associated with either real or anticipated communication with another person or persons. So, it is fear, and it can be either real. I mean, for example, a high stakes interview. Yeah, the fear may be real there. There's possibility that you would be able to get something out of it, and the fear of losing it would be big. Or anticipated. Maybe you aren't even thinking about the interview, or you are never going to engage in this interview, but the fear of an anticipated communication in that situation can also drive you to not even engage or not even attempt to receive that interview. So we do this, we have communication apprehension in all sorts of situations outside of public speaking. We have it on first dates. We have it in job interviews. We have it when we are asking for something big from someone who we know or care about. So even when we engage in conflict. So we have communication apprehension in all sorts of situations, and a lot of the tactics and things we're going to talk about with with public speaking is going to translate to all forms of communication apprehension. So let's dive right in. There are three basic types of communication apprehension. There is trait anxiety. Trait anxiety is nervousness in many types of situations. This is an inherent trait. This can also be attributed to shyness. Then we have state apprehension, and this is nervousness immediately before and sometimes during the speech. So it is because of the situation where you're like, okay, in the speech, now I'm nervous. And then we have scrutiny fear. And scrutiny fear is an interesting one because it's based in how you are being watched and observed and not specifically about a public speaking situation. This is understandable. And this kind of goes through the spectrum of a lot of fear and trait, and then not so much fear, and in only a few situations in scrutiny fear. And state anxiety is somewhere in the middle. The point of this is that sometimes we will not be able to completely overcome our anxiety. That is okay, and that's part of the process. You can still be anxious and still give great public speeches by adapting and changing some of the ways that we present, as well as some practice. So, no matter our amount of anxiety, we will always have the ability to communicate. In fact, anxiety is just another means of energy. And you can direct that energy any way you'd like. You can direct it into freaking yourself out, picking at your shirt, saying or you can take that anxiety and put it into something productive. If I am anxious about this, then I am being pushed to practice more. I am being pushed to try new things and figure out some other ways to present this. Maybe I'm asking people to help me so that I can get more comfortable. So anxiety is one of those constants. We will always have some form of anxiety, some level of anxiety, but all forms or measures are overcomable. So, what can communication apprehension lead to? It can lead to physiological reactions and psychological reactions. Physiological reactions are those physical things, psychological are mental. Let's start with physiological reactions. There are many potential physiological reactions you can experience, from racing heartbeat, sweating, nausea, difficulty breathing, dry mouth, shaking, twitching, wringing of hands, nervous laugh, chest pain, fainting, verbal fillers, palms are sweaty, knees weak, arms are heavy, vomit on the sweater already, mom's spaghetti. So all of those things are created by this communication apprehension. And does it say anything about our character that we experience physiological reactions? No. It simply is a reaction to external stimuli, that we are nervous, we have a communication apprehension, we do these physical things because we are in this situation. I liken it to, if it is hot outside, we sweat. If it is cold outside, we shiver. When we are in a comedy show, we laugh. When we are at a drama, we cry. These are physiological reactions that do not say anything about us physically. They are just things that happen. With that in mind, they do also communicate something that maybe can affect negatively our ethos. So we want to try to remove them. Some potential ways to remove them are thinking about it, practicing, thinking about what you're going to say before you say it, and even taking pauses, all of which are ways to reduce some of these physiological reactions. And then we have psychological reactions, and there are many to these as well. First, procrastination is the biggest one. We tend not to do the things that we like to do first. We tend to leave them to last. And there is some benefit to that, maybe building up to something, but when when we don't do these things, they only get bigger in our minds. And we procrastinate on things that make us anxious. This not only means classroom stuff. Guess what? The classroom stuff, that has a deadline, so it's fine. But broaching a topic with your relational partner, like an issue with your significant other um, that may um, that may hurt the relationship, that communication apprehension, that's something we could procrastinate on till forever. But we can even talk about job interviews. The job interview that we really, really want, we can very easily procrastinate on because that has no deadline. So we can have these physiological reactions, and these physiological reactions can persist. This procrastination can persist until it literally destroys people's lives. That those 5-year plans turn into 10-year plans, turn into 15-year plans, turn into regrets due to the physiological reaction of this anxiety, of this communication apprehension. We also can engage in some negative self-talk. Negative self-talk is those things like you're stupid. Oh my gosh, why did you do that? Well, you're going to do horribly. First of all, we would never say this to anyone else. Second of all, it's unwarranted, unnecessary, and can actually cause legitimate harm on yourself. So we want to be sure that we are removing these from our vocabulary, and instead replace it with positive self-talk. You can do it. You may not have succeeded this time, but you learned a lot, and now you're going to be able to succeed in the future. Saying things like that. We also have blanking. Just forgetting what you're going to say, and at that point you're like, how do we prevent this? We prevent it through practice. The more we practice, the less likely we're going to blank. And we also have adrenaline. Adrenaline will be very common, and it can lead to a fight or flight reaction. And there's one that's preferable for our situations. We want to engage in this fight reaction. The fight reaction takes courage, and even if we fail, we've learned from the situation. What does that flight reaction? Not engaging with it, failing backwards, not engaging it with it, not learning from the situation, and increasing our fear of situations like that. So those are the physiological reactions and psychological reactions. I'll see you next time for part 2. Bye.